They say a mother's love is unconditional. But for 18-year-old Pamela Alexander, her own mother's love was laced with nothing but poison. Trapped in a crumbling estate where reputation mattered more than mercy, she woke up every morning expecting violence and went to bed praying for escape. She thought this was her destiny, to be broken down piece by piece until nothing remained. But fate has a peculiar way of rewriting stories. Sometimes rescue doesn't arrive as you expect it. Sometimes it comes in the form of a silent, powerful duke from the northern estates, a man the aristocracy whispered about in hushed tones, a man who didn't ask permission to do what was right. This is the story of how Benedict Kingsley, the Duke of Westhaven Thorn, pulled a shattered girl from hell, and the shocking truth she discovered behind his iron gates. The summer heat in the Alexander estate didn't just warm the air, it suffocated everything beneath its weight like a wool blanket, soaked in despair. It was 1843, and the dust from neglected gardens coated every surface in a layer of grey shame, including the marble floors of the once grand drawing room where Pamela lived on her knees. Pamela scrubbed the stone until her knuckles bled, the harsh soap burning her cracked skin. She didn't dare lift her eyes. She could hear the sharp tap of heeled boots crossing the room. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of approaching thunder. "You missed the corner," a voice sliced through the silence, cold as winter frost and twice as bitter. Pamela flinched. Years of survival had taught her body to react before her mind could process. "I'll fix it, Mother. Forgive me." Carol D. Alexander didn't look like a villain. She looked like a painting come to life, draped in silk the color of sapphires, her hair perfectly coiled, her posture impeccable. But beneath that porcelain mask lived something twisted and cruel. She crossed the room, her skirts whispering against the floor, and stopped where Pamela knelt. Without warning, Carol kicked the wash bucket. Water and soap flooded across the freshly cleaned marble, soaking through Pamela's thin cotton dress. "Look at this mess." Carol's voice trembled with manufactured rage that seemed to feed on its own existence. "Clumsy. Worthless. Just like your father was before the fever took him. You think scrubbing floors pays for the food you eat? For the roof that shelters your ungrateful head?" "No, Mother," Pamela whispered, staring at the spreading water. "Get up!" Carol hissed. She grabbed a fistful of Pamela's hair and yanked her upright. Pamela bit down on her tongue to keep from crying out. She had learned long ago that screaming only extended the punishment. "Go to Mr. Charles at the lending office. Tell him I need an extension on the household account. Don't return without his signature, or I'll remind you what happens when you disappoint me." Pamela stumbled toward the door, her wet dress clinging to her legs. The heavy oak door slammed behind her with a finality that echoed through her chest. Outside, the afternoon sun burned her eyes, but it was a mercy compared to the darkness inside. The walk to town felt longer than usual. Every step reminded Pamela of bruises hidden beneath her clothing, their souvenirs from the previous night when she had broken a teacup. Carol's discipline had been swift and thorough. Ashford Village bustled with afternoon activity. Merchants called out their wares. Carriages rattled past on cobblestones. Women in fine dresses strolled arm in arm, parasols shading them from the sun. Pamela kept to the edges, invisible in her plain, damp dress. She had learned to make herself small, to avoid eye contact, to become a shadow that moved through the world without drawing attention. Attention meant questions. Questions meant lies. Lies meant more beatings for making the family look suspicious. The lending office sat between the apothecary and a tea shop. Pamela paused outside, gathering courage. Mr. Charles was kind enough, but his kindness had limits. Everyone's kindness had limits when it came to Carol Alexander. She pushed open the door. A bell chimed overhead, cheerful and out of place. Mr. Charles looked up from his desk. He was a portly man with thinning hair and spectacles that sat crooked on his nose. The moment he saw Pamela, his expression shifted from pleasant to pained. "Miss Alexander," he said quietly, "your mother sent word you'd be coming." "Yes, sir. She needs an extension on the account." Mr. Charles removed his spectacles and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Pamela, I can't keep doing this. The account is already 4 months overdue. The bank is asking questions I can't answer." Panic flared in Pamela's stomach. "Please, Mr. Charles, just 1 more month. I'll find work. I'll pay for it myself somehow." "You're 18 years old. You shouldn't be carrying your mother's debts." He looked at the bruise forming on her cheek, or the one Carol had given her that morning. His jaw tightened, but he looked away. "I'll sign the extension, but this is the last time. Tell your mother I mean it." Relief washed over Pamela, followed immediately by dread. The extension wouldn't be enough. It was never enough. But going back with nothing meant worse than going back with inadequacy. "Thank you, sir." Mr. Charles scribbled his signature on a document and handed it to her. As she reached for it, the office door swung open. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Pamela turned slowly. Standing in the doorway was a man who commanded attention without saying a word. He stood well over 6 feet tall, dressed entirely in black. His riding coat was tailored but weathered from use. Dark leather gloves covered his hands. A riding crop hung from his belt. His hair was dark, or swept back from a face that looked carved from granite. A thick beard framed his jaw, and beneath the shadow of his hat, his eyes were the color of storm clouds. This was Benedict Kingsley, the Duke of Westhaven Thorn. Pamela had heard stories. The Duke came south from his northern estates only twice a year. Some said he had killed a man in a duel. Others said his wife and daughter had died under mysterious circumstances. Everyone agreed he was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with power. He stepped inside. His boots struck the floorboards with deliberate weight. The scent of leather and rain followed him. "Charles," he said. His voice was low and controlled, like distant thunder. "The timber contracts. You have them." Mr. Charles shot to his feet, nearly knocking over his chair. "Your Grace, I wasn't expecting you until next week." "Plans changed." Pamela tried to slip past him toward the door. Her worn shoe caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled forward, her hands reaching out instinctively. She collided with his arm. It was like hitting a stone. He didn't move at all. She gasped and pulled back as if burned. "Forgive me, Your Grace. I'm so sorry." She braced for anger. Men of his station didn't tolerate being touched by someone like her. But he didn't look angry. His grey eyes studied her with unsettling focus. His gaze dropped to the bruise on her cheek, then to her bleeding knuckles, then to the way she held herself, hunched and ready to bolt. "Who are you?" His voice was quiet, but impossible to ignore. Mr. Charles cleared his throat nervously. "That's Miss Pamela Alexander, Aunt Carol Alexander's daughter." Something flickered in the Duke's expression. Not pity. Something harder. Something calculating. He looked back at Pamela. For a moment, she thought he would speak again. Instead, he reached out one gloved hand, palm up, not grabbing, waiting. Pamela stared at that hand. Slowly she placed her small, damaged hand in his. He lifted her upright with effortless strength. His grip was firm but careful, as if he understood exactly how fragile she was. Go home, Mr. Charles whispered, trying to break the tension. Pamela pulled her hand back, clutched the signed document to her chest, and fled. Pamela barely made it back to the estate before sunset. Her mother was waiting in the parlour, a glass of wine in one hand and rage simmering in her eyes. Well? Pamela handed her the document. Carol scanned it and laughed bitterly. Another extension. Do you know what this makes us look like, Pamela? Beggars. Pathetic, grovelling beggars. I tried, Mother. Mr. Charles said. The slap came fast and sharp, snapping Pamela's head to the side. Her vision blurred, but she didn't let the tears fall. Crying only made things worse. Don't speak unless I ask you a question, Carol hissed. Get out of my sight. Pamela fled to the tiny room she called hers, barely more than a storage closet with a cot and a cracked mirror. She pressed her hands against her face and focused on breathing. She didn't hear the knock at the front door. She didn't hear the low, measured voice that spoke with Carol in the hallway. But she heard her mother scream. Pamela crept to her door and pressed her ear against the wood. "But you have no right!" Carol's voice was shrill with panic. "No right to enter my home and make demands. I'm not making a demand, Mrs. Alexander." The Duke's voice was calm, but steel ran beneath it. "I'm informing you. Your daughter will be reassigned to my estate as a ward under my guardianship. The papers are legal and binding. She's my daughter, and you've forfeited that privilege." Silence stretched like a knife blade. When Carol spoke again, her tone shifted, became calculating. "What will you pay?" Pamela's blood went cold. "Nothing," Benedict said flatly. "This isn't a transaction." "Then why?" Carol's voice turned mocking. "Do you fancy yourself a hero, Your Grace? Saving broken girls to fill the void left by Mary and that child of yours?" The silence that followed was suffocating. When Benedict finally spoke, his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but the threat in it was unmistakable. "Sign the papers, Mrs. Alexander, or I will have magistrates here by morning, and every debt, every cruelty, every bruise on that girl's body will be documented and presented to the Crown." Pamela heard the scratch of a pen, heard her mother's bitter, choked sob. Then footsteps approached her door. The door opened. Benedict stood in the frame, still wearing his coat, his expression unreadable. "Pack what you need," he said quietly. "You're leaving tonight." Pamela stared at him, unable to process the words. "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Just trust me." She looked past him toward the parlour where Carol stood, frozen, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. Pamela looked back at Benedict. "Know why?" "Because no one else will." She packed in silence. A spare dress, a shawl, a small wooden box that had belonged to her father. Everything she owned fit in a cloth bag. Benedict waited by the door. When she was ready, he gestured for her to follow. As they passed through the parlour, Carol sneered. "You'll regret this, Pamela. You'll come crawling back." Pamela didn't respond. She stepped outside into the cool night air and climbed into the Duke's carriage. The door closed with a soft click. Through the window, she watched the Alexander estate disappear into darkness. She didn't know if she had been rescued or traded. The journey to Westhaven took 3 hours. Benedict sat across from her in silence, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the window. Pamela didn't dare speak. She clutched her bag and tried to make sense of what was happening. When they arrived, she saw a fortress rather than a home. Westhaven Thorn rose against the night sky like something out of a Gothic novel. Stone walls, narrow windows, iron gates that closed behind them with a heavy clang. A woman in a grey dress met them at the entrance. She was older, perhaps 50, with sharp eyes and capable hands. "This is Karina." Benedict said. "She manages the household. You'll answer to her." Karina looked Pamela up and down, her expression neutral. "Come with me, child. You look half dead." Pamela followed her through corridors lit by oil lamps. The walls were lined with portraits of people long dead. The air smelled of beeswax and old books. Karina showed her to a room on the second floor. It had a real bed with clean linens, a fireplace, and a window that overlooked the gardens. "Bathwater will be brought up shortly," Karina said. "There are fresh clothes in the wardrobe. Rest. You're safe here." Safe. The word felt foreign. Karina paused at the door. "His Grace doesn't bring people here lightly. Whatever happened to you, it's over now. But there are rules. You don't leave the estate without permission. You don't speak to outsiders. And you trust him when he tells you something. Understood?" Pamela nodded. Karina left, and Pamela sank onto the bed. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry. Days passed. Pamela slowly adapted to life at Westhaven. The routines were strict, but not cruel. Meals arrived at precise times. The servants moved through the halls like ghosts, efficient and silent. Benedict himself was rarely seen during the day. He spent hours locked in his study or riding across the estate grounds. Pamela learned the rules quickly. Don't wander the East Wing. Don't enter the Duke's study uninvited. Don't ask questions about Mary or Lady Rosie. She pieced together fragments of their story from whispered conversations between servants. Mary had been Benedict's wife, a gentlewoman who loved music and gardens. Lady Rosie had been their daughter, barely 6 years old when she died. Both had succumbed to fever 5 years ago, within days of each other. The grief had hollowed Benedict out. Some said it had made him cold. Others said it had made him dangerous. Pamela began to understand his silence wasn't cruelty. It was restraint. He was a man holding himself together through sheer will. One evening, she found him in the library, a massive room lined with books from floor to ceiling. A fire crackled in the hearth. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Your Grace?" He glanced at her. "What, you don't have to call me that when we're alone." "What should I call you?" "Benedict." She hesitated. "Benedict, why did you really take me from my mother?" He turned from the window, studying her. "Because I saw myself in you. I don't understand. I spent years trapped in grief, letting the world tell me I had to endure it silently, that suffering was noble, that pain built character." He shook his head. "It's all lies. Pain just breaks you unless someone pulls you out. No one pulled me out. But I could pull you." Pamela felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." The nightmares started 2 weeks after Pamela arrived. She would wake gasping, her mother's voice echoing in her ears, the phantom pain of old beatings making her body ache. One night, she woke up screaming. Within minutes, Benedict was at her door, undressed in a nightshirt, his expression tight with concern. "Are you hurt?" "No, just dreams." He hesitated, then stepped inside. He lit the lamp on her bedside table and sat in the chair by the window. "Tell me." "It's nothing. Just my mother." "It's not nothing." His voice was firm. "Trauma doesn't disappear because you escape the source. It lives in you, haunts you. You have to face it or it will consume you." Pamela pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "How do you face it?" "You talk about it. You acknowledge it. You stop pretending you're fine when you're not." She looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the controlled exterior, she saw exhaustion. Grief. A man who had survived something terrible but hadn't truly healed. "What happened to Mary and Rosie?" she asked quietly. His jaw tightened. For a moment, She thought he wouldn't answer. "They got sick," he said finally. "A fever swept through the estate. The doctor said it was bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. But I knew better. I had enemies. Men who wanted to see me destroyed. The fever wasn't an accident. It was murder disguised as a tragedy." Pamela's breath caught. "Who?" "A man named Finch. He works for powerful people who don't like when someone stands in their way. I stood in their way, so they took everything I loved." "Why haven't you stopped him?" Benedict's smile was cold. "Because proving murder when the weapon is disease is nearly impossible. I've been building a case for 5 years. Evidence, witnesses, a paper trail. And now, by bringing you here, I've given Finch exactly what he needs to come after me again." "What do you mean?" "You'll see soon enough." The danger arrived on a cold morning in early autumn. Pamela was reading in the library when Karina burst in, her face pale. "He's here," she whispered. "Finch is here." Pamela's stomach dropped. She moved to the window and looked down at the courtyard. A man in a grey coat stood beside a black carriage, flanked by 2 armed men. He looked ordinary, almost forgettable, except for his eyes. Cold, calculating, predatory. Benedict met him outside. Pamela couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the tension in Benedict's posture. After 10 minutes, Finch climbed back into his carriage and left. Benedict returned to the library, his expression dark. "What did he want?" Pamela asked. "He's investigating reports of impropriety. A young woman living unchaperoned with a duke, rumors of abduction, questions about my intentions. But you have the legal papers. Legality is a matter of interpretation. Finch doesn't care about the law. He cares about finding leverage, and now he has it. What are you going to do? Prepare for war." Pamela spent the next few days watching Benedict prepare. He sent letters, met with lawyers, reviewed documents late into the night. But Pamela saw something he didn't. She saw the trap closing. Late one night, she crept into his study. He was asleep at his desk, papers scattered around him. She scanned the documents carefully. Her blood turned to ice. Hidden among the legal papers was a sealed order. Not an investigation, an execution order. Finch wasn't here to discredit Benedict. He was here to eliminate him. Pamela's hands shook while she grabbed the document and left the study. She had to think. I had to plan. Benedict had saved her. Now it was her turn to save him. The next morning, Pamela confronted Benedict in the stables where he was saddling his horse. "You're planning to surrender yourself," she said. He looked up, surprised. "How did you—" "I found the execution order. Finch isn't here to arrest you. He's here to kill you and make it look legal." Benedict's jaw tightened. "I know." "Then why are you preparing to go with him?" "Because it's the only way to keep you safe. If I resist, he'll manufacture evidence against you, too. You'll be arrested as my accomplice. I won't let that happen." Pamela stepped closer. "You saved me from one person who thought they could control my life. I won't let you sacrifice yourself to another." "Pamela." "No." Her voice was firm. "What, you taught me that pain only breaks you if no one pulls you out. Well, I'm pulling you out, and you're going to let me." Benedict stared at her. "What are you planning?" "Something Finch won't see coming." 3 days later, Finch returned with a magistrate and 2 constables. He looked smug, confident in his victory. But when he entered the main hall, Pamela was waiting. She wore a proper dress Karina had altered for her. Her hair was pinned. She looked every inch a lady. "Gentlemen," she said clearly, "before you proceed, there are things you should know." Finch's smile faltered. "Miss Alexander, this doesn't concern you. It concerns me more than anyone." She produced a folder of documents. "Inside are medical records documenting every injury my mother inflicted on me for the past 5 years. Witness statements from servants, the merchants and neighbors, and a signed confession from Mr. Charles detailing my mother's financial fraud and coercion." The magistrate frowned. "What does this have to do with the Duke?" "Everything. The Duke removed me from an abusive home, legally and properly. But Mr. Finch is here under false pretenses. He's not investigating propriety. He's attempting to execute a man who exposed corruption 5 years ago. The same corruption that led to the deaths of Mary and Lady Rosie Kingsley." Finch's face went red. "You have no proof." "I have all the proof I need." Pamela turned to the magistrate. "Check his sealed orders. You'll find they contradict his stated purpose." The magistrate looked uncomfortable. He turned to Finch. "Oh, is this true?" "She's a hysterical girl trying to protect a man who manipulated her." "Then you won't mind if I review your documents," the magistrate said slowly. Finch hesitated. In that hesitation, the truth became clear. Benedict stepped forward, standing beside Pamela. "If you proceed with this fraudulent arrest, every document Miss Alexander mentioned will be submitted to the Crown. Your investigation will become a scandal, not mine. And the people you're protecting will throw you aside to save themselves." The magistrate cleared his throat. "I'll need time to review these materials properly." "Take all the time you need," Pamela said calmly. Finch left that afternoon, his authority shattered. The investigation quietly disappeared. Carol Alexander found herself socially ostracized, her reputation destroyed. Weeks passed, and the danger faded. Life at West Haven returned to its quiet rhythms. Pamela stood on the terrace one evening, watching the sun set over the estate. Benedict joined her, his hands in his pockets. "You saved me," he said quietly. "You saved me first." "So we're even," Pamela smiled. "Not even close." Benedict was quiet for a moment. "You're 20 now, old enough to make your own choices. You can stay here as long as you want, or you can leave. Build your own life. I won't stop you." Pamela turned to face him. "What if I want to stay? Not as a ward, but as someone who belongs here. With you." Benedict's expression softened. "I'd like that." She took his hand. For the first time in years, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. Months turned into a year. Pamela learned to ride. She helped manage the estate. She laughed without fear. And slowly, carefully, she and Benedict built something neither had expected. They built a home. Not perfect, not without scars, but theirs. One winter evening, as snow fell softly outside, Benedict found Pamela in the library, reading by the fire. "I have something for you," he said. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, beautiful. "I'm not asking you to forget what happened," he said quietly. "I'm asking if you'll build a future with me anyway." Pamela looked at the ring, then at Benedict. She saw the man who had refused to look away when everyone else did. The man who had given her safety when she had nothing. The man she had saved in return. "Yes," she said simply. He slipped the ring onto her finger. She rose and kissed him, gentle and certain. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. Inside, two people who had survived hell found something better than rescue. They found home. They found each other. They found peace. If you believe in stories where the broken become whole and the rescued become heroes, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now, because We have more powerful stories coming your way. Stories that will move you, challenge you, and remind you that courage can come from the most unexpected places. Drop a comment below, telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to say hello and know how far our stories are reaching. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.